Alright, so back here on the 1978 Toyota pickup. So, been working on getting the firewall prepped so I can put the engine back in there. So, what I was working on is this whole section here. And so, I cut it, and then this is where like the HVAC and everything was coming through. So I just cut it on both sides and then just hammered up the bottom of it, and then in order to meet up with the outside of the firewall, and then had to like cut little triangle pieces to meet up where this piece got bent up to meet with the outside, and then there's a little triangle piece right there, and then just sort of rough grinding that because I don't really care. I mean, it's just the firewall piece. I gotta obviously clean the hell out of this thing, seam seal, everything else. A couple little bumps and whatever else on this piece don't bother me none. So I'm just gonna leave that sort of rough ground. I sort of did the same thing on this side. I was putting that off for a while, but once I get all strapped up with the face shield and goggles and face mask and everything, respirator and everything, might as well do a bit more grinding while I'm there. Again, just sort of rough grinding some of those things because, like I said, it ain't ever going to be no show truck, so I don't really care that much. So yeah, I mean, that's all, knocked out of the way and, ground enough and welded as good as I'm going to get it. There are some holes here, and I was able to get like little tiny ones. Like I could probably fill that in with weld, but something like that, there's no way. Like these ones, you'll never fill that in with weld. You'll just be chasing it and making a mess, and once it moves a little bit, it's just going to crack. So there's no way to fill something in like that. I did find online a little kit that sells a bunch of circles in different sizes that are specifically meant for that kind of stuff, so I might buy that because these holes here are totally pointless. They're just going to be a spot that'll end up letting moisture and crap get in there. So I'll probably I got to fill all those in. The other thing that I got to fill in here are these vents. And so the wiper assembly is inside of this location. This is the access side for to adjust and attach the wipers, and then the other side is where the motor and everything hooks in, and the washer fluid comes in through that side and everything. And so these are going to stay here because there's little panels that cover this up, so I'm not worried about that. So the reason why this was opened up is because inside of the cab there's this box here, and this box here was on the interior, so on the opposite side of the firewall, and then that's where the HVAC would be pulling in fresh air, and then being able to have some sort of air supply coming into that. Now that's going to get covered in, so the engine sets far enough back that box ain't gonna do any air. Like the engine will be in, the firewall will be past where that box ends, and that box will effectively be on this side of the firewall now, so that ain't gonna do me any good as far as like a fresh air supply for the HVAC. And so since the fresh air supply, that's what the point of all these vents were, is to suck in some air, and there's no point for me to have it because it ain't going to work the way it was supposed to anymore. And I'm not going to cut like another hole inside of that cavity because on the inside of this, I mean, it's just like destroyed from just letting years and years and years of moisture and leaves and pine needles and crap get inside of there. So this is just a spot that will collect dirt and debris, so I have no value in keeping this. And so I'm going to patch that in. I don't necessarily know exactly how I'm going to do it, so you can see like there's sort of like faux grill on this side where it has the open grill all along here, and then it just sort of closes off. So from like a style perspective, you know, I could cut the whole thing out and then put a panel behind it to cover it. So it'll be sealed, but then the grill will still be here. Or I'll cut it all out and I'll just put a flat panel in. You know, it has these sort of like body lines here that there's, you know, I could cut out even all the way out here and get rid of that body line grill thing completely and just smooth off the front. So I'm not exactly sure what I'm going to do about that quite yet. I got to fill it in for long-term maintainability, but then the rest of it's just aesthetics. Like, how do I want it to end up looking? Since I'll be losing this vent, so these are the side vents that just let in pure fresh air. And so, you know, I guess like people thought they'd only ever drive these trucks when it's hot, but so this just lets in air. That's all it does. And so you can imagine, like, you know, living in the mountains, I sure as hell don't want fresh air coming in here when it's, you know, 10 degrees outside. So, like, I don't even want that. Like, that ain't helping me none. I see no point in having this at all. So there's a little plastic cover that goes over here that is just a little plastic, you know, vent that covers over the top of this, which is precisely why the cab corners and the rockers were wasted, because this just lets water get in, it goes down, the weep holes get clogged, and then you get a bunch of rust. And so this is just another maintenance nightmare for me to deal with. And so that's going to get covered up. And so what I'll have to decide is like what I end up doing. Like if I completely get rid of it, like I do in the, you know, the front, then I'll completely get rid of it here. I'll just make a panel that fits in spot place, weld it all in, smooth it off. Or if I keep those vents on the front, then, you know, the plastic piece that covers over the top of this, you know, I'll just cover, you know, I'll just butt weld a piece to where it's covered, and then that'll just be like, you know, a faux vent. So I haven't decided on that yet. All right, so what I'm working on now, so I got my engine at a hell of an angle. I'm gonna, you know, try to get this stuffed in here. Y'all can laugh at me as I monkey around with it. I haven't tried stuffing it in yet. I just yanked it out, and that was quite a faff to get it out of here. And so I got a bunch of angle on it. I hope I can just like stab the transmission down through, get it in far enough, and then be able to lift it up to get it up on the new cross member piece that I have in there. But we'll see. If it sucks real bad, I'll just stop the video, because I know I'm already going to look like a moron. I don't want to look like extra moron. So y'all can watch this or not. All right, not too bad. Now, that looks like, of course, you should be able to do that. Why would I have to take the cab off? Well, if you saw, I had my floor jack under there, and I had it jacked up as high as it would go. So the tail shaft of this transmission, after I got it in here, the transmission was sitting like way up here. And I sure as shit ain't making a tunnel that sits way the hell up there. So, you know, because it's the welded in cross member, you know, I can't get the transmission to come pass all the way. And then once it's like basically touching the ground and everything's cleared, to jack it up to get it level. Like that ain't gonna happen. And so we'll see. I was thinking about potential designs in order to, you know, make that instead of a welded in jobber, to potentially have that bolt in. I'm not going to tackle that right now because I don't have to. After I get the floors all structurally good, which is why I have it in here, so I put the engine and trans back in, so I know exactly the clearance I need for the tunnel, and I'll tack it in all in place, and then after I get it tacked in place, I'll rip it out and then, you know, burn the rest of it in. So then, you know, from here, like once it's structurally sound, you know, I can just pull the body mounts real quick. There's nothing in here, and I could, you know, pull the cab off of this real easy. I left my pieces that I have up under the rocker to lift the cab. I left those on there, and so, you know, I should be able to take the cab on and off no problem, since there's nothing else going on inside of here. But, you know, afterwards, like if I wanted to replace a clutch or something, I'd have to take the cab off, which would be a pain in the ass. And so we'll see. I'll think about potentially making the cross member bolt in, and then I'd be able, you saw that crazy ass angle I had, it'd actually have to be even steeper than that. And so basically I'd have to run it to where I'd, you know, get the lip of the tail shaft over the top of that, the core support in the front, and, you know, be lowering it down, and effectively that would be like on the ground. Like that would be, you know, the whole contraption would be crazy steep. You know, with this chain setup that I got right here, you know, I can't really get any more angle out of it. So what I could do is I could put my hook all the way super far right here, and then put like a screwdriver through it so it stays in place, and then I could get that ridiculous angle. You know, they have the fancy, you know, spin it jobbers that allows it to adjust and all that crap. I don't have one of those, and so we'll see. When I yank it up out of here, I'll try to pull it out with the floor in place and see how impossible it is. And then, you know, like I said, I'll have to take the cab off in order to get the engine and trans out of there so I could finish welding it. But yeah, I mean, you could see the motor mounts I made, you know, those went fine. Like, you know, I dropped it down, you know, the angles and everything are such that, like, you know, I just was able to just drop bolts through on all four of them. You know, I was able to get the bolts through for the transmission cross members. So that part of it, real happy with. That seems like those are going to work out great. I left this screw here, this bolt here loose, so it can sort of like follow in whatever that angle is. And then now it's, you know, working good. So that worked out pretty well. Yeah, so now from here, I got a bunch of layout in order to figure out all of my angles and everything. I might, you know, pre-assemble the engine a little bit again like I had done previously to make sure that when I'm making the firewall, I don't make some bonehead move that makes it too small, and then all of the accessories and crap that I got over there, I won't be able to get them on. That's the other thing, is that if I were to bolt all of the accoutrements onto the engine, the sucker gets way bigger. Like, you know, the intake comes way out here, you know, the turbos and exhaust actually come out further. You can see the reason why the hole's so big is because those things come way the hell out here. And so, like, if I was stabbing that engine out, you know, it would be much bigger than it is right now. Fortunately, there aren't actually too many things that are on the back side of the engine. And so there is, like, you can see this oil line that goes on the back. There's a water line that comes around the back as well. I think some vacuum hoses and some other small things. But yeah, there's actually not too many things that are on the back side of the engine. So really, where the backside is now would be where it would end up being when it's fully kitted out. But yeah, I mean, you can see when I tried to stab it in here that I was getting my crank pulley hitting up on the core support. And then imagine that, you know, I'm getting it barely past here and there's no radiator, right? And so at a minimum, if I was going to have this set up to where I could yank the engine with the cab still on it, at a minimum I'd be taking the radiator out, because there's no way in hell this would have gone in place with the radiator in there. And so even with the, you know, the clearance that I have to get it sort of closer, you know, for sure that pulley's going to go banging into the front part of the radiator and break the fan and everything. So, like, you know, regardless, if I have it in its current configuration, it would definitely be pulling the radiator in order to get the engine out, which, you know, I'm sure that's probably pretty common, so I don't know that that's a big deal. But all right, cool. So I'm going to start laying out crap for the firewall, and we'll see where we get. All right, thanks. See you in the next one.